So welcome to Book and Bujo if you are new, and welcome back if you have been here before. I am Debbie, and it's so nice to see you here. Today is my long-awaited September wrap-up. All right, September wrap-up. It's been a long couple months. A lot of books read. I will be combining my September and October stats, so stay tuned for that one, and then I will do a separate October wrap-up for the books themselves and readathons. So, September books, readathons, readalongs, book clubs wrap-up today. Let's get started. I have my handy-dandy reading journal cheat sheet, as usual, with my TBR on it. First up, for my first roll, I landed on a non-reading prompt, and I drew the card for watercolor or oil pastels, and I had planned on doing a watercolor class with Vanessa paints, but alas, that was not in the cards for me. So let's go ahead and give you my New York trip update as we are starting here with my wrap-up. I went to New York with my mom to visit family, and we got there, we had amazing travels. Everything went smoothly, like everything took off and landed on time. The transportation from our house to the airport was amazing. Like, it was great. I was very impressed. So big kudos to Groom Transportation and Southwest Airlines because it was amazing. I was so impressed. All of the flight attendants, everybody was great. So big thank you to all of them for making our trip very memorable and quick and easy. So we get to the airport, my niece and her partner pick us up, and it was wonderful. It was great to get to know them because we haven't met them before, so it was very nice. And we get to my niece's apartment and we get to settled in. It's like 9 o'clock at night. So we get in, we have a quick little reunion and get settled in, talk about what the plans are for the next day, and then we get to bed because we're exhausted. Everybody's tired, so we're going to bed. The next day we get up, and our goal for that day is to clean my niece's apartment, just to give her something. She works so hard. She has a really long commute, and we wanted to do something for her so she would have a great rest of the week and not have to worry about those kind of things. So that was our plan. We were going to get up, we were going to make sure that she had everything she needed before she had to leave for work, and then we were going to clean her apartment, and then the next day we were going to do laundry, and then over the weekend we were going to go see a Broadway show and see New York and have my niece give us a little tour and everything. It was going to be great. Pretty much get the apartment cleaned up. We did not get to the laundry, so we were going to do that the next day, and we prepped some dinner for my niece and us to eat that night. We got to meet a couple of her neighbors who were super nice and very friendly. They were amazing. About 3/4 of the way through the day, my niece calls and says, "I'm not feeling very good. Just to give you a heads up. Like, I feel like I'm getting a cold, just to let you know." And we're like, okay, not a problem. She leaves work, starts heading home. Her bus gets delayed. So instead of a 45-minute commute, she now has almost an hour-and-a-half commute. And so she finally gets home, and she's like, she's wearing her mask because she does that anyway. She works retail, so she always has her mask on. And she goes into her bedroom and she takes a COVID test and positive. So we stay 6 feet apart. At least she wears her mask the entire time. We spend the rest of the evening changing all of our transportation to leave the next morning so that we don't get it, because my mom is older and we don't want her to get it. So we got everything changed over. Again, huge kudos to Southwest Airlines and Groom Transportation because they changed everything quickly and easily for us, like no hassles, nothing. It was amazing. They were wonderful. And then I scheduled our Uber for the next day, and we went to bed. We got up the next morning. Luckily, my niece did not have to work the next day, so that was good because she was sick, so she got it off. So we prepped. In the morning, we got up early. We prepped food for the rest of the week for her, so she didn't have to worry about any of that, and so she could have stuff to eat. And then it starts raining. We're like, ooh, well, this will be fun. Should be fine. Not a problem. So by the time we go downstairs to wait for the Uber, it is downpour, like so much rain. Like this is like Arizona monsoon kind of rain where it just like gushes for like 20 minutes, but then it goes away. Well, yeah, it wasn't going away. So flooding was starting to happen. Our Uber driver, huge kudos to him, massive 5 stars, huge tip for him. From the time he parked at the curb to the time we got into the car, our bags, and we were driving again, less than 2 minutes. It was amazing. It was awesome. He was great. And his driving skills to get us to the airport, we were only about 20 minutes away from the airport, so it wasn't that far, but you could see, we look out the window at one point, and luckily there was a barrier between us and where the water was, but it was literally this high up the car. Like it was almost to the window of the passenger side where I was sitting. It was crazy raining. So we get to the airport, and the flight attendants, everyone is like, go, 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 get on this plane right now, go, go, go. We got everything in the overhead compartments, we were on the plane, and we took off in like record time, and we found out we were one of the last flights to actually take off from the airport before they grounded all the flights because of the rain. So huge blessing on that. That was amazing that we made it out. We have our masks on this entire time, so we wore our masks from the time we left the apartment to the time we got home. So we were able to get a direct flight this time, which was great because last time we had to change planes. So this time we were able to stay. We did have additional stops, but we didn't have to change planes. So that was great. So we made it to the airport. We got to leave there on time. We landed on time. And huge thank you to my in-laws as well, because luckily my mom had driven to our house and left her car there. So when we got to the airport, we got our bags, no issues with that either, which was great. And we get onto the groom transportation shuttle, which was taking us back from Phoenix back up to Prescott. And when we got here, my husband drove my mom's car over, left her keys in the car, kind of got out, and then his parents came and picked him up and took him back home. And then my mom and I got in her car, so we didn't have to, worry about contaminating them. We got in the car and we drove to my mom's house, which is about 45 minutes away. And she has a guest room, which is is kind of behind her house. It's basically a room and a bathroom, and then a shared kitchen in her house. So we got there. She went into her room, I went back into mine with our masks, and then there we quarantined for the next 5 days until we could take a COVID test. And luckily, we were negative, so we did not have COVID. So that was good news. We were both negative, so we went into town the next day to go grocery shopping, and we just drove my mom's car, and then she just dropped me off at my house on her way back home. So we randomly met up with my aunt. She happened to be in town doing some shopping, so we all got some lunch together and then got back home. Basically a day early than we had originally planned on being home, but of course we hadn't planned on having to quarantine and all of that. So unfortunately, I did not get to see a whole lot of New York, so I will have to go and visit her again at some point in time. And actually, my mom is there right now. She left today to go and finish hanging out with my niece because all of us were very sad that we weren't going to get to hang out a little bit more. But I wasn't able to go right now because I had some other obligations. But my mom is able to go out there and spend a week with my niece, and so they can finish what they were originally going to be doing at the time, and my mom feels much more comfortable going on her own since we've already been there. So all of that to say, I was not able to do my watercolors because I did not have any watercolors with me while I was in quarantine. So instead I used my brush pens and other things that I had from my bullet journal that I happened to take with me. And so I did a little fall scene with my lettering and brush pens. And I used a bunch of words I associate with fall. So fall, autumn, pumpkins, leaves, maple, boo, and spooky. And I just kind of repeated that pattern throughout the page and then wrote fall in the middle. So I thought it turned out kind of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this anyway. It was very enjoyable and relaxing under quarantine. All right, so prompt number 2 was an odd card, and that was to read a YouTube recommendation. And for that, I read The Crippled God, which is the 10th and final book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Steven Erikson. That was amazing. That whole series is amazing. Definitely in my favorite fantasy series of all time. That goes right up there. So good. So I feel it was the ultimate ending to an epic series. This series had so much going on from start to finish. I am so glad that I pushed through because you're introduced to so many characters in the first 2 books, and then somehow Steven Erikson is so good at bringing all of those characters together for this like ultimate ending of this series in this last book, The Crippled God. And the final battles, how this book wraps up and ends is chef's kiss. Just so good. I would say 4.5 to 5 star series from start to finish. There might be a couple of the books where they're a little bit lower 4 star and a little bit higher, I guess, higher 5 star. I don't know if you have a 5.5 star. But overall, I would say a 4.5 star series for me. I would definitely recommend, highly recommend. It is a dark fantasy, so I mean that the whole series is about war, and it has battles and so many different types of characters and so many different species throughout the series. Highly recommend. Highly, highly recommend. I have to thank Andrew's Wizardly Reads for his readathon, the Wizardly Readathon, because that brought about some really great books to my TBR for September, and I wouldn't have read them if I had not participated in that readathon, because a bunch of these books were suggested buddy reads and team book reads and things like that for the readathon, and I probably wouldn't have picked these up at this point in time if it had not been for that. So, roll number 3. Another odd, and it was to read a book with green on the cover, and for that I read The Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan, and that is the first book in the Legends of the First Empire series. So this is my first Michael J. Sullivan book. I have seen quite a few of them, I just haven't actually read any of them yet, and I have heard a lot of people say that they are even better on a reread, and I can definitely understand why. The Age of Myth is a very good start to a story, but I feel by the end I felt like it was still a little bit unfinished, but then again it's the first book in the series, so when you read the second book and the third book you kind of get more and more of the story. It's a good setup to the storyline for the series itself, but just the first book on its own feels more like a quest to the start of something. And I think once you finish the series, if you go back and do a reread, then you'll pick up on a whole lot more of the things that you may have missed the first time around. So in the Age of Myth, the Frey are thought of as gods. They seem to be invincible and immortal. Not only are the Frey fierce in battle, but they also wield magic. Now, one of these Frey fall to a human blade, and that changes everything. So the balance of power and the perception of the Frey now start to shift, and the Age of Myth has now come to an end, and the rebellion has now begun. I thought the humor and the relationships between the characters was very enjoyable, especially Suri and Persephone. I really enjoyed their banter back and forth. There are also some really good twists and turns throughout the book. Highly recommend. I gave it 3.5 stars. Definitely recommend it. Walter had to come say hi. Rule number 4 was another odd card, and that was to read a small book, so something under 300 pages. And for that I read Troll Bridge by Terry Pratchett, and that was only 10 pages long, so definitely under the 300, and that is the book 14.5 in the Discworld series. And what more do you need to say than Cohen the Barbarian is back in this book in the series, and he is so much fun. I love Cohen. So he is here to do hand-to-hand combat against a troll to prove himself and show that he is still worthy. But will Cohen and the troll fight to the death? Or will they just chat it out and reminisce about times past? So Trollbridge is a short story and a part of an anthology as a tribute to J.R.R. Tolkien. And it was very enjoyable. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad I got to read it. So for rule number 5, I landed on Amazon Borrows, and for that I read The Night of Many Endings, and that is by Melissa Payne. Now this one is not what I thought it was going to be at all. I wasn't actually sure what I was expecting from this one. It had library bookshelves on the cover, and it sounded like people were kind of stuck in the library overnight, and I'm not quite sure what I thought it was going to be from there. If it was going to be a mystery, something more about the books and some kind of magical land, I don't know, but definitely not what it actually was. So The Night of Many Endings is a literary fiction that touches a lot of mental health issues. So we follow 5 different characters that get stuck in a snowstorm inside a library. So we have the librarian and her security guard, we have a homeless man, and a young high school girl who is there just doing some reading and getting out of the house, as well as an older lady who is there to use the internet and play on the computer. And this book quickly delves into some really tough issues. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this book for drug use, drug addiction, attempted suicide, death of a loved one. There's a lot. This one was a little tough to read at times, but it was very good. I thought it was written really well. The character development throughout the book and the bonds between the different characters as the night went on was really great. I think the book did a really good job dealing with these tough issues with mental health, with drug use, with dealing with family members that have drug addictions. It definitely hits you in the heartstrings, especially with real life storylines and just realistic plots, realistic human connections, as well as heartwarming moments. So if those are things that you are excited about, then you would probably really enjoy this book. Did get a little teary a couple times, but personally this is not the style of book I gravitate towards. I definitely like to go into a book to escape more of the realistic world and go into fantasy worlds and things that are fantastical and interesting and fun. And I mean, I love Malazan Book of the Fallen, so I'm not afraid of, a grimdark or dark storyline, but this one was a little too realistic for me. Not that it hit super close to home, but there definitely were some things in there that made me a little uncomfortable reading. The characters were very well developed. I did have a little trouble connecting with them just because a lot of their situations aren't things that I've personally had to deal with. There are a couple things in there that I was able to connect with, but overall, on the whole, didn't get as invested as I could have, I think. I did give this one 3.5 stars. I did very much enjoy it. I'm glad I read it, glad I got out of my comfort zone to read something new, but again, not my personal cup of tea. Book number 6, I landed on Go, and that is a free choice space. I can pick whatever book I want, and for that I read The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan, and that is the 5th book in the Wheel of Time series. I did love this one, so I did give this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I liked all the different perspectives that we got, And again, we're still following Rand and the figuring out the Dragon Reborn and all of those things that I don't want to get into any spoilers. So just all the things at the beginning, we're still following all of the crew from the Two Rivers and all of the travels that they are going through. Although a couple of my favorite characters were not featured quite as much in this book, which was sad, but that's okay. They were highly featured in one of the other books. So one of the things I have noticed in some of the previous books, when you get perspectives from everyone, is you get the same storyline from each person, just from their personal perspective, which can get a little repetitive because they're all walking from A to B, and you know, person one notices these things, person two notices these things, but all the rest of it's still the same. So it can get a little repetitive. We didn't have that as much in the Fires of Heaven just because we had less perspectives to listen to. But I do feel like we got to know those characters who we did have their perspectives from just a little bit better, which is great. Now, some of the things that you can look forward to in this book, some heart-racing battle scenes, always interesting, emotional impact, and intrigue. We also see some plot points starting that kind of lead us to where the next books are going to be heading. That was kind of exciting as well. You can see some things starting to come together to form actual plot lines. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how those grow and resolve in future books. Roll number 7 was an even card, and I got TBR jar, and for that I pulled Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This was a great book. I can't believe I haven't read this one yet. I've seen all of the movies, and even though not all of them are all that good, some of them are pretty cheesy, I still love them all. They're super fun. Ian Malcolm is, of course, one of my favorite characters, but of course my absolute favorite character is Dr. Grant. I just love his character. I love the actor. Now, I have, of course, seen the movies multiple times. I actually own the first movie. And there are definitely differences between the books and the movies. I could see why they made the changes they did. There are some changes that I'm like, did you need to make that change? I don't think you did, but, you know. But one of the things that I did notice in the book versus the movie is the kids aren't too bad in the movies. I mean, there's some points where you're just like, oh my gosh, you're annoying. But in the book, one of those children was just irritating most of the time, the majority of time. Now, granted, I am not the biggest kid person. I am not great with young children. I'm okay with mid-sized children. I do much better once they get older and can do things on their own, like high schoolers. Anything below that it's a little bit more of a struggle for me. But oh my goodness, that child. There are also some other differences to endings, the very beginning of the book, some of those kind of things, but I can see why they made those changes, and so that those didn't bother me. I love the book, I love the movie. They are not the same, but that's okay. But having seen the movie and not having read the book yet, it kept me very interested and moving quickly through the book because I want to see, okay, what differences are there going to be? Are they going to do this the same? Is this going to be different? And so that added kind of a little bit of an excitement for me anyway. And Ian Malcolm was still an amazing character in the book. Same with Alan Grant in the book and in the movie. Love them both. Michael Crichton is an amazing author. Just the way he can merge all these different genres together. He's got fantasy, he's got sci-fi, he's got horror, he's got some thriller aspects to this, and just merge them all into one book and have it be so seamless and enjoyable and amazing. So impressive. So I originally gave this one a 4.5 star, but now that I've been sitting on it a little bit and thinking about it a little bit more, I may actually give it 5 stars. If I reviewed it again, I would probably give it 5 stars. But for now, we're going to stick with the 4.5 star just because how annoying that child was throughout the book. Yeah. The characters, even though that one child was very annoying, they were all very engaging and interesting. I was invested. I wanted to know more about them and how they were going to react to all the different things, especially if it was going to be any different from the movie. I mean, you have Nedry and all, yeah, just So good. Highly recommend both the book and the movie. And of course, if you're wondering where the horror and thriller aspects come from, dude, dinosaur amusement park. There's dinosaurs. And one of the things that I found interesting, they have it, I don't remember if they actually had this exactly the same in the movie. I know they touched on it in the movie, but I don't remember if it was the same kind of thing. But they were like, okay, we always have X amount of dinosaurs. This is how many we made. They can't reproduce. And so this is how many we always have. And so they always check, we'll just do a random number because I don't remember the actual number off the top of my head. But we always have 269 dinosaurs in the park. So they always check 269. Yep, they're all there. And then, of course, Ian Malcolm, I'm pretty sure, is the one who said it. But have you ever checked for more dinosaurs? Just to make sure they're not reproducing? You're like, no, they can't reproduce. They're all females, you know? Then they're like, well, just humor me. Check for more. So, okay, we'll check for 275. Oh. There's 275. How about check for 289? Oh. Yep. 295? Mm-hmm. So that whole scene in the book was great. I loved how that played out, but just the humor throughout the book, offset with the horror and the sci-fi and all of that, was just done so well. Writing style, amazing. Atmosphere, 10 out of 10. So good. Highly recommend. If you have not read this one, you got to get out and read it. All right, book number 8, I landed on nonfiction, and for that I read Dolly Parton, Songteller, My Life in Lyrics by Dolly Parton and Robert K. Orman. So this whole book is pretty much told in interview format. So basically there's an interview that asks the question and then Dolly Parton answers. And it's kind of separated into her different songs that came throughout her career. So it's not chronologically, it's just more of a little bit random. My mom, so I listened to the audiobook, but my mom actually has the physical book, and man, that is a hefty book. That is a huge, heavy book. It's definitely a coffee table book, so it's, you know, it's a big book. It's probably it's definitely bigger than my reading journal here. And it's pretty thick, but it's really heavy. It is beautiful. There is full color pages all throughout with a bunch of her outfits, pictures of her with a whole bunch of other artists, and it has her actual song charts in there. So like when she would write out song lyrics, there's pictures of those in there. It is beautiful. If you can find the physical book, even if you don't purchase it, I would just peruse through it. If your library happens to have it, I would totally get it. If you see it in a bookstore, flip through some of the pages. It is just beautiful. And the whole story itself, the whole book is just so good. And the audiobook was amazing because in between all of the different questions, they would play snippets from her songs. And so that was super fun as well. And some of them were even more fun because, of course, I was listening to it at faster speeds. Songs would go a little bit quicker, so it was kind of fun on some of them. But I would try and slow it back down for the songs and then speed back up for the talking. But it was really good. I think Dolly Parton is an amazing woman. She has done so much, not only for music genre, but just people in general. She is just a kind-hearted person, which is amazing. So my parents, especially my mom, loved Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. We would listen to them and their concerts all the time. We had VHS tape that had one of their concerts on it, and we would watch that all the time. Watched 9 to 5 a lot, and my parents loved The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. They just thought it was a great story. It's Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds. So we would get to watch part of it, and then they would make us leave as kids, and then we would come back in later on and finish the movie. And later on they would let us stay in, but they would do this to us so we couldn't actually see what was happening. And then as we got older, we actually got to watch the whole movie because there is some nudity in the movie, so just be aware if you're going to end up watching that. But there is one line in that movie that has stuck with me my whole life, and it's something I have always lived by. And the quote that Dolly says in the movie is, "If you see someone without a smile, give them yours." And that somehow, even when I was a kid, I heard that, and that has just stuck with me all the time. whenever you're out and you see someone that isn't smiling, smile at them. Give them a smile, because that may make their day. You have no idea what they're going through, and sometimes just a stranger looking over at you and giving you a smile and maybe saying hi could be the only kindness they've had that day, the only little bit of sunshine. So that's something that has always stuck with me, and that's probably one reason why I have huge parentheses on the side of my mouth, because I try and smile all the time. Doesn't always work, but it definitely helps. And another way to look at it too is if you're looking in the mirror and you see yourself without a smile, give yourself one, because when you smile, that helps brighten your own day, especially when you don't feel like smiling. So, just a thought. So again, this book is all about Dolly Parton and her life and her inspiration for all the different songs that she has done, how she got into the business, and all about her family and everything else that she has done in her life. So I highly recommend this one. It was such a good book. 5 stars. Okay, roll number 9 was another even card, and that was my most recent purchase, a short story, and it's Sunset Stays by Craig A. Falconer. And it was just a fun, quick little short story, of course. It was like 65 pages, I think. And it's a little mystery. This woman is in her 70s, her husband has passed away, and they had always decided that they were going to go to another planet and stay at Sunset Stays, which is a retirement home for more of kind of the elite. Her kids, of course, think she is way too old to be traveling in space, but she is determined. And the mystery is, so she's going there for a very specific purpose, just her family doesn't realize it. So she had a son that passed away when he was young. He was hit by a car and was killed, and her and her husband found out that the driver of that car is now at Sunset Stays under another name. So she is purposely going there to confront this woman, which was kind of an interesting story on its own. But even being a short story, for some reason it didn't focus on that. Like, that resolved super quickly, and then all of a sudden there's this new mystery that she's going through that happens at the retirement home. I felt like if it had just focused on the one story, that would have been really good. But kind of quickly resolving that and then doing a different story in there was a little confusing, and I don't know if jarring is really the right word, but it was kind of abrupt. You're like, all of a sudden, like, wait, what's happening? Both stories were interesting on its own, but I feel like they should have been separate. Like, the full short story should have been on the original plot line, and then maybe hint at the new storyline towards the end of it, and then you would have like a sequel short story to it that had that one. I think that would have gone over a little better, but it was still fun. It was intriguing. It was interesting. I enjoyed it, had fun with it, gave it 3.5 stars. If you're looking for an off-planet sci-fi short story, I would recommend it. And that was all of the books for my TBR-opoly rolls. But next up, we still have book clubs and readalongs and readathons. Book clubs first. For the catch-up book club, we read The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, so it's the second standalone and the 5th book in the First Law world. I thought this one was entertaining. So we're following characters we already know and love from previous books, and then also some new characters that we may have heard their name, but we weren't really introduced to them, and also some new ones that we haven't heard from before. The Heroes is following a war that is taking place over 3 days. Each kind of chapter it's kind of like the before, the 3 days, and the after. So basically you have a chapter for each day of the war, and you're seeing it from all the different sides of the people that are participating in the war. And I am very impressed with how much Joe Abercrombie was able to fit into those 3 days. So he was able to go back and forth between perspectives from the Northmen as well as people from the Union, and so we got multiple perspectives from each of those. It gives you more of a take on the world itself, so you get to see a little bit more than if you just had one person's perspective. You have like the First Law world, and then this battle kind of takes place in this one little area, and it's amazing how much you're able to dial into that little area and really kind of get the feel of what that area is like, what the battlefield looks like, and the terrain and everything like that, how he could just dial down into this minuscule little section of the map and give us all these details about it. I would have liked more history on not just the world, but also the two sides of the battle, like why is this battle taking place. I would have liked a little bit more history on that besides just what we got in the book. The pacing is definitely slower, which is kind of obvious since it's just taking place over 3 days. There's only so much fastness you can put in there. I mean, there's definitely battles, and so you get the fast pace, adrenaline pumping sections from that, but the battles only last for so long as well. And then there's cleanup and just recovering after each of the battles. The battle scenes and the dialogue are written really well. Joe Abercrombie really knows what he's doing when it comes to grimdark and battle scenes and dialogue between the characters. So I wouldn't skip this one in the series just because it takes place in such a short amount of time, as there's some great writings and some amazing characters in here. So I did give it 4 stars, but I think depending on the day, some days I may tell you 3.5 stars, other days would be 4 stars, but overall I would say this is a 4-star book for me. It's probably 3 to 3.5 for some other people. I had the Backlist book club with Covers with Cassidy. We read Holy Sister, which is the 3rd book in the Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. This was definitely my favorite book in this series. I loved how everything just wrapped up. The pacing was much more fast-paced in this book. It's still not a fast-paced book, but it was much faster than the other books in this series, and the characters have just developed so nicely over the 3 books in the series. Just watching Nona grow up from a young girl to this fierce warrior has been a great journey. So this book follows Nona's perspective from 2 different time periods. One of them is the present day, and the other is from 3 years before, which is pretty much when Grey Sister ends. So you get that perspective plus the present day, which is 3 years later. I feel that this series is very character driven, which I do love. I love me some good characters. And Mark Lawrence does an excellent job throughout the trilogy of building up all of his characters, developing them, giving them some bonds with each other, and just showing some more depth as they grow, which makes us care about them more and more and get a little more invested in each of the characters. The atmosphere is dark and it's riveting. The magic is interesting. I do love the concept of the ship hearts and how those are used in their magic system as well. I would definitely recommend this series. 4 stars for me. All right, 2 more book clubs. The next one is The Howling Pack, and we read The Bone Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart, and this is the 2nd book in the Drowning Empire. We continue following Lynn. She is now Emperor. Jovis is around as well, which he is one of my favorite characters, and I do like the character interactions. One thing that Lynn struggles with in this book is nobody really knows her well, so nobody feels like they can't trust her because they don't know her, and she doesn't really have any political alliances, so that makes it really hard for her as a new emperor. Everybody loves Jovis, but is he all that he seems? Can he be trustworthy? Does he have his own agenda? But the best part of this book, Mephi. If you know, you know. Enough said. If all you love about this series is Mephi, it's worth it to read the whole thing. Just for Mephi. He's such a great character. One thing I am not quite sure about yet is the ending of this one. I feel like the 2 different antagonists in the book were kind of convenient, a little convenient at the end. I don't know, it makes a good setup for the final book, but I felt that whole plot line with the 2 of them was a little convenient. And then lastly, the J&R Book Club with Joshi Curran reread The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This was a very interesting book. So this is a fantastical magical realism book that touches on mental health issues. So there are trigger warnings for severe depression and attempted suicide in this book, so just be aware of those. So one night, Nora finds herself in this magical library where she gets to live through all of her regrets, all of the decisions that she made that she now regrets, and how things would have been different if she had made a different decision, which is actually very interesting. I do find that concept intriguing, as I feel most people would probably find that. There's some parts of the book that kind of bothered me just a little bit. I feel like it romanticizes the living through your regrets and trying to make them different, trying to live out different choices instead of living with reality and how to deal with them in the real world, I guess. So overall, a very intriguing story and an interesting perspective on dealing with your regrets. Now for read-alongs. So we had the Wheel of Time read-along with Sandra from Got a Thing for Things, and we read The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan, which is the 5th book in the Wheel of Time series, which I've already talked about. The Malazan Book of the Fallen series, this was the last month for that book. And we read The Crippled God, which is the 10th and final book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson. And then the Shadowhunter read-along, we read The Shadowhunter's Codex by Cassandra Clare. This was basically a textbook for young Shadowhunters just coming to be a Shadowhunter and giving them the history of Shadowhunters and different things they need to learn as a new young Shadowhunter. And along the way of the book, we have annotations by Jace, Clary, and Simon, which are hilarious. I love seeing them again, even through just writing in there, but it was hilarious. And Cassandra Clare is just so amazing, such a great writer, like to be able to come up with like a textbook for the world that she's created. And I just think that was so interesting, and it was very fun to read. I don't think it's a must-read for the series itself. You don't get a whole lot of new information about the Shadowhunter world in general, but it was very interesting, and if you love the Shadowhunter world, I would definitely pick it up. For the Cosmere read-along with Elliot Brooks, we read Rhythm of War, which is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, and that was amazing. I can't wait for the 5th book to come out next year. So good. All of the characters are just amazing. I love the mental health rep that is in this book. The message of hope that can shine through your darkest moments that comes through in this book is just beautiful, as well as learning how to trust ourselves and others around us. I just thought it was so special. I also appreciated seeing that people have to accept the consequences of their actions, even when they're making decisions out of their best intentions. Sometimes there's consequences to those decisions and those actions, and I love seeing that that actually happens in this book. And also finding a strength in our weaknesses and finding that thing that keeps us going and not give up, whether that something is from inside us or inspiration from those around us. Character building and world building is still the strength of these books. So good. As well as some crazy plot developments. And I'm amazed at how fast I read this book. It's like 1,200 plus pages, and I feel like I just like zipped through it in like a week. I think it was like 6 days that I got through this book. I just couldn't put down. It was so good. I just kept wanting to read more and more and more. So good. This book had so many inspirational moments in it, and just heartwarming moments, and action, and just character building. It was great all around. 5 stars. Highly recommend. All right, now we have Around the Disc in 800 Days with Literary Diversions, and there was only 2 books for this one, but I actually read 3. So I read Troll Bridge, which is the 16.5 book in the Discworld series, and then we read Interesting Times, which is book 17, and Masquerade, which is book 18. So Interesting Times is the 17th book in the Discworld series, but it's also the 5th book in the Rincewind sub-series. So I know not everyone likes Rincewind, but I do enjoy him. I think he's hilarious. He basically gets thrown into these outrageous situations, and somehow by luck and randomness, he seems to get out of it intact. And this book is no exception to that. Not my favorite in the whole Discworld series, but still very enjoyable. And then Masquerade is so far my absolute favorite book in the Discworld series so far, and of course I'm only on book 18, but is also the 5th book in the Witches series. This one is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, and as someone who was in choir and band and all of that growing up and just absolutely loved Phantom of the Opera, I'm sure I made my parents' ears bleed trying to sing some of those songs out just at the top of my lungs in the car on the way when they were driving me to and from school. I loved this book. I thought it was so much fun, and just because I love Phantom of the Opera, I already know that story, and it was so fun reading through Terry Pratchett's take on Phantom of the Opera and throwing in the witches in there. It was great. Best book so far. And then lastly, I did receive a book from an author for an honest review, and that was Linden Falls by Joshua Hershey. This one was a very interesting book. I would highly recommend this to anyone who loves a fast-paced book from start to finish, just nothing, non-stop action and stuff happening for the most part throughout this book. The characters are very interesting. The world is built very well. Mabel, our main character, discovers a book that transports her to the realm of angels and demons. So she is no longer on Earth, but she has now been transported to the realm where angels and demons live. She learns to wield a sword of fire and faces a spirit-infested dragon. She sets off to save her people from slavery, and she meets some special people along the way. So is Mabel going to be able to free her people, or will she end up destroying herself? I thought the characters were very interesting. Personally for me, I thought the book was a little too fast-paced. I feel like there's some characters that are thrown in there that feel like we should know who they are, but we don't because it's the first time we've been hearing about them, but they end up being kind of a main character. So we do get to learn more about them along the way. I would have liked a little bit more of the world building, but the battle scenes and the strategy were all very exciting and intriguing and interesting, and I would definitely recommend it. I gave it high 3-star, low 4-star for this one. A very enjoyable read, quick and fast and easy to read. Writing style was enjoyable. I would recommend. Last but not least, we have some readathons. So we'll start out with my year-long readathons, and we'll start with Buzzwordathon, and that was a game word in the title of the book, and for that I read Troll Bridge, because bridge is a card game. Troll Bridge by Terry Pratchett. And then for Adventures in Aeldia, the year-long read-along, for Ariel, she had to go on a date and read a romance, and for that she read Long Live the Elf Queen by J.M. Curl. This is the second book in the Elf Queen series. I thought it was originally a duology. I have now found out that it is a trilogy, and this book ends on a cliffhanger. Let me just tell you, I want the next book now, but there's not even a date that it may be released yet. So we're going to have to wait a little while for this one. So I was so excited to get back into the story because the first book kind of ended on a cliffhanger, and now the second book also does. So I want the third book, but it's not out yet. We continue to follow Layla and Thane. So Layla has been fighting against falling in love with Thane. Thane has basically quickly and easily fallen in love with Layla and has been fighting to win her heart. And can their love withstand the trials that are coming for them? The overall pacing and the plot is a bit on the slow side, but now finding out that it's a trilogy, that makes a little more sense. I love the new characters that they introduced. We got some dragons coming in here. I really like J.M. Curl's writing style. It's very easy to read. It's understandable. It's got a really nice flow to it and has just the right amount of prose. So I do like a little bit of prose. There's a little floweriness in there, but not a lot. And J.M. Curl has just the right amount in there for my taste. So the world building, I think, was right on par with it from the last book and continued through this book, and it set up the world building. The two of them meshed really well together. The atmosphere helped with the world building helped with the atmosphere. That was very nice to see. And there was definitely a lot of emotional impact in this story. Highly recommend the series if you like that fae romance going on. Very good. Has a really good evil antagonist as well. And then Karasu had to take an advanced inscription class and had to read A Dark Academia, and so he read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which of course we already talked about. Now for the month-long readathons. So first up was Sufferathon with Pages with Paige, and this one was a great readathon. It was hilarious. It had me cracking up. A bunch of the hosts got together, and what is like worst case scenario for you, we're gonna make you do that. Make you suffer through the month in this readathon. It was very fun. So for each week you got a new set of prompts too, or a new something you had to do. So the first week was to read a book with illustrations. So that was kind of like your pre-buy into the readathon. And for that I did read Buffy the Vampire Slayer Volume 6 by Jordi Belair. And this one did have, the different storylines were interesting, but I don't feel like they really went anywhere. I did like the storylines with Anya in it. I thought they developed her character very well. But I feel like Faith's storyline kind of fell flat, which is sad because I really liked her character in the TV series. I'm kind of hoping this volume was kind of a little speed bump to get us into the next volume, but I don't know if I have high hopes for the next one, if it's going to be like Volume 6 was. So kind of very low 3-star for me on this one. So that was kind of your pre-buy into the readathon for the beginning of September. And then for the first week of September, you had to read a book with a genre of your lowest rated book. So I had to go find my lowest rated book and see what that genre was, and it was actually a nonfiction. And so I read a nonfiction for that, and I read Dolly Parton's Songteller, My Life in Lyrics, and again, I gave that one 5-star. It was amazing. And then you also had to roll a die, and if you got an odd, you had to read for an hour every day, and if you got an even, you had to read for 2 hours every day. I rolled and I got a 3. And so I only had to read for an hour. I actually ended up reading 2 hours every day anyway, just naturally. So that was a win for me. Second week, we had to read for 30 minutes first thing in the morning. So as soon as you get up, you had to read for 30 minutes. So I got up, I put an audiobook on while I went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, brushed my hair, all of that kind of stuff for 30 minutes. And then I did my normal routine after that. So I usually start my day with my devotionals. So I had to do that one second for that 1 week. But I did do that every day. So the other prompt was to read a book with a cover that reminds you of your favorite breakfast food. But for some reason, I didn't write down, I know I did that, but I didn't write down the book that I used for that. I did write down Continental Breakfast, but I don't remember what that was. And if you didn't complete any of these, you had to do a punishment prompt that they had for each week as well, which was also fun. So yeah, I don't remember. Oh, Continental Breakfast, I remember now. So the Continental Breakfast was, so you're staying at a hotel in Sufferathon. It's the Sufferathon Hotel, and this is for the Continental Breakfast. So each week the prompt had to do with something around the hotel. One of them was you had to get directions to the hotel. The next was you had to check into your room. And so this one is about the Continental Breakfast in the morning. But I didn't write down what book I read for that. So for the third week is the games room, access to the games room. And so you had to read a book you have been putting off. And for that I read The Midnight Library and Of Dawn and Embers. And so The Midnight Library and Of Dawn and Embers are both ones I've been putting off for quite a while. I started the Of Cinder and Bone by Kyoko M, that series, a couple years ago, and I finally, this is the third book in the series, I finally got to this one. I've been wanting to read it all year, and I finally got to it in September. And then The Midnight Library, I've been wanting to read this for a couple years as well, because it's been on BookTube for quite a while, and I finally got around to that. And then for the last week, read a book that has made someone angry. And again, I was kind of, by the end of September, I was traveling and then quarantined with not much of my stuff with me. So I didn't really write anything down about what I read for those. And I know I did read some books for that, but I just didn't write down. I don't remember what it was. Then I did do some side quests from Aurelium Academy, so you could do those throughout the year. It didn't necessarily have to be in August, and I did fulfill a couple of those. This one was to look after the library cats and get a key to the library. You get 10 points if you've completed this one. So I had to have the letters S and P in the title. So for Karasu, I actually had 4 of them that I could use that I read. But for Karasu, he read Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and for Ariel's character, she read Dolly Parton, Songteller, My Life in Lyrics. And then for the Wizardly Readathon with Andrew's Wizardly Reads, I was on Team Ranger, And unfortunately we did come in last, but that's okay. I didn't quite get all, with traveling and all of that, I got all my books read, but I didn't get all of the books submitted or reviewed in time. So unfortunately I didn't quite get as many points as I wanted to for my team, but I did read quite a few books. So for the prompt, so there's 8 prompts that you had to read. So the first prompt was the Bard prompt. Author shares name with a famous musician, and I read The Crippled God by Steven Erikson, because Steven Tyler, great musician with Aerosmith. And then a Druid prompt features an animal companion, and there was quite a few I read for this one too, but I chose Earth Spells Are Easy by Renee George, and she did have a cat as an animal companion in that book. And for the Ranger prompt, it was features an assassin. That I read Of Dawn and Embers by Kyoko M, and that one definitely had a couple assassins in it, actually. And somewhat an assassin in training, I would say. And then for the party prompt, read your team book, and the team book was The Blood of the Spear by Mark Timon, and that was a very enjoyable book. That's one I did not get submitted in time, and Of Dawn and Embers I did not get the review submitted either, so I missed out 3 points for my team for both of those. And then for the Ranger prompt, you have to have a bow or an arrow on the cover, and for that I read The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. For the Warrior prompt, a chunky book, 700 plus pages. I had a few of those on here. I had 2 over 1,000 pages, so but this one I chose Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, 1,200 page book, definitely counted. For another party prompt, cover features a nature or landscape, and for that I read Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. For the buddy read, which was another party prompt, and this I read NPCs by Drew Hayes, and that was actually a very fun book, very interesting. NPCs is the non-player characters in role-playing games, and I would definitely recommend that one. That was a lot of fun. Okay, 2 more readathons. We had Seasonathon Academy, and that was with Completely Melanie. We have participated in this one for a couple years now. You have to complete 5 prompts for your major, and then there's some extra prompts you can do for your minors if you want. I actually did complete my major. So English 1020, a new to you author, and that was The Blood of the Spear by Mark Timon. English 2530, a book involves battle or war, and for that I read NPCs by Drew Hayes. Art 1110, a graphic novel or a comic, and I read White Sand by Brandon Sanderson, which was also part of the Cosmere Readalong, which I forgot to talk about. White Sand, I didn't realize it has 3 volumes to it. I've only read the first volume, so I just put on hold the second and third volumes for my library, so I should be getting those on Monday, and I will read those for November and December. And it was pretty good. It was nothing amazing. The magic system is definitely very interesting, and the artwork is great. The storyline, I feel like it was just getting started. You had a little bit of something happening at the beginning, and you've got some plot stuff starting, a little bit getting to know the characters. Volume 1 basically set you up for Volume 2 and 3. Next we have Behavioral and Social Sciences, a book with a female empowerment, and for that I read Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. And then we have Foreign Language 2140, author from a different country, and I read Interesting Times by Terry Pratchett because I'm the US, he is from England. And then for my minor, I did read 3 books for that. I had English 2510, read a hyped book, and I read The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. English 2530 involves battle or war, and I read The Crippled God by Steven Erikson. It was nice that some of these prompts were the same as the prompts from Missouri Readathon. And Anthology 4500, Culture Other Than Your Own, and I read Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. And then last but not least, we have Readalong with Melanor Reads. I was on Team Black Dragon. So we had a bond prompt, so we had to, for the Black Dragons, our prompt for bonding with our dragon was to read a book that features a prominent relationship, and I read Restless Slumber by KJ Sutton, which is the second book in the Fortuna Sworn series. And that was really good. I enjoyed that one. I actually liked it a little bit more than the first book, I think. Again, cliffhanger. And then a bonus prompt, a previous 5-star author, and that was White Sand by Brandon Sanderson. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to go through these really quick here so I can finish up. Level up prompts, we have read a book with red on the cover, and that was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. We had title is Movement, so Sunset Stays. I guess that's kind of a lack of movement by Craig A. Falconer. And then a series continuation, The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. So that was my September wrap up. Thank you so much for being patient with me until I could get this out there. And thank you so much for letting me hit 375 subscribers. You guys are all amazing. Smash that like button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything else from me, and leave a comment below with what readathons you participated in September. And until next time, keep reading. Bye!